And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wings in Culver City.
John, I continue, for some reason, to listen to this 4-hour podcast appearance by Gavin Newsom on the Sean Ryan Show. We've gotten to the point in Gavin's bio where he talks about meeting Willie Brown for the first time, and Gavin is just letting the swears go a mile a minute.
And everyone thought I was a damn boy wonder, genius. So much so that Willie Brown, the mayor, said, I'm going to appoint you to the Parking and Traffic Commission because I was bitching about doing business in San Francisco, the mop sink and everything.
You were pissed because it was a $27,000 mop sink and a carpeted.
I wanted the city to pay me back. Damn it, yeah.
Whoa.
This guy might curse more than you and I combined during the commercial breaks.
Well, that's why he's a podcaster and not on the radio, because if you talk like that on the radio, you'd be in the unemployment line real quick. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the founding member of the Recall Gavin Newsom 2020 campaign. You can find him online at rebuildcalifornia.com and follow him on X at Netter Mike. Mike Netter, welcome.
Well, gentlemen, how you doing today? Wait, this is John and Randy. John and Randy, how the heck are you guys doing today?
Well, it's Jimmy Buffett Friday, and the weekend is almost here, so I am a happy camper.
Indeed. If we didn't only live in California, but we do, and the weather's beautiful. I just got back from Alaska where the weather's cold. It's interesting, Randy, to hear you talk about Gavin Newsom's podcast that he's on right now. But direct me where you want to go today, because, of course, as you know, I can talk a lot, and I have a lot to say.
Well, let's start out with the breaking news from Sacramento, where California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that the High-Speed Rail Authority is suing the Trump administration over its $4 billion in cuts regarding federal grants that were supposed to go to high-speed rail. Here is what Gavin Newsom had to say, quote, "This is just a heartless attack on the Central Valley that will put real jobs and livelihoods on the line. We're suing to stop Trump from derailing America's only high-speed rail actively under construction," end quote. Mike, how rich is it that the California High-Speed Rail Authority is suing someone for failing to deliver what was promised?
Well, first off, I'll start with something basic. And every time I hear this, I have to laugh. John Phillips, if you walk into a bank and don't take out cash, as you previously said, but you walk into a bank and you want to get a loan, or you go to your uncle at Christmas, I'll call him Uncle Johnny, and say, hey, I'd like you to loan me some money or give me some money for my college fund. Is it a really good idea to insult them publicly? How does Gavin really think his rant and raving, not to mention the fact that the project has no accountability? But to begin with, how do you really think this is going to end up when you're suing, biting the hand that feeds you, as they say over and over and over again? And the real ridiculous part is, what is this project up to now, supposedly costing like $135 billion or something beyond comprehension? And right now, $4 billion is not going to make or break this project. Not to mention the fact they're taking money out of cap and trade, costing us at the gas pump. It's just, again, another talking point, in my opinion, for Gavin Newsom. Trump, of course, a talking point, his point is he gets to stick it to Gavin. But the reality is there's no accountability for where the money has gone so far. Look, you gentlemen covered it yesterday. Who exactly is getting paid to work on what they've done what have they done after 5 years? We have a really big sidewalk. Okay, I mean, that's what they show us pictures of. Look, we have a sidewalk that's a couple of miles long. I'm like, that's great. That cost how much money? No transparency and no accountability is kind of the theme of California government. But the reality is, how does California government think it's going to end when, forget even the people and the accountability and the actual legal morass to begin with, when you insult continuously the people that are supposed to be giving you the money? I mean, The only time I've seen Gavin grovel is when Trump flies in and he's actually in his presence, when he needs to beg for money for the Palisades, and as soon as, quote, the uncle leaves the building or the boss, he starts insulting them again. It's very interesting that these politicians, and I want to get to that in this segment, make no effort to actually govern and work. They say, we're going to work with both sides of the aisle. You can't even work with some individuals and show what you're doing and how do you think it's going to end. Yes, they're going to yank the funding. You're not even meeting with them, talking to them, having conversations with them, which is the way working government should be functioning.
When you look at high-speed rail in the context of what we know about things like, homeless services advocacy groups, where we know that the money that's supposed to be going to reduce the homeless population in California is not doing that. We know that money is going to politically connected people. Those politically connected people are hiring other politically connected people. The government is funding these organizations. Some of that money is finding its way back into the campaign coffers of the politicians who are bankrolling these organizations, and the problem exists in perpetuity. When you look at high-speed rail and you think about all of the people who work for that authority, the board members, the administrators, the people who are working in middle management, and you look at all of the property that was purchased by this high-speed rail authority, eminent domain, I guess, if necessary, and you look at just the amount of money that they spend in government contracts and other things, a lot of people are getting rich off of this. If we start pulling at strings at this organization, this high-speed rail authority, do you believe we would find the types of corruption that we see from the homeless services advocacy groups and other groups that rely on a lot of government money?
If I spent as much money on anything, or anybody did, with the results that they have today, of course we would. Look, you talked about in your show yesterday, who's in charge of it? Look, magically they're related or know people that have been in government before. How do you spend that much money, whether it be homelessness, whether it be I hate to even use the word bullet train. I'm going to call it sidewalk, if you don't mind. On a sidewalk this long and have these kinds of results. The problem we have always in government, why we started the recall to begin with, why we continue to fight today at Rebuild California, is there's zero accountability. And let's start at the top with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, by his own admission, without insulting anybody before your email lights up here today, has severe dyslexia, really bad at math, can't run a spreadsheet, has trouble reading. Where does he get his information from, how this is actually turning out? I mean, who are the people around him? Do they just hand Gavin something and say, hey, we're $1 billion short, give us $1 billion? Of course we're going to find corruption, because anytime you run any kind of organization and the boss happens to be the governor of California, whether you like it or not, which Gavin may not know, but somebody should send him a memo. He's not running for office. We'll get to that in a second. You are going to find corruption. The trouble is they don't really allow things to be audited, and by the time they're audited, it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road when it's out of the public purview and we're on to other things. I would challenge anybody in reverse to try to build me a project. Come to me right now. John and Randy, you are smart guys. Any of your listeners out there, I want you to reverse engineer a project where you can spend as much money as we've spent on this sidewalk and show what you have today without corruption. I'm trying to fathom what they've actually spent the money on, and nobody really seems to know this, because it certainly hasn't been on a high-speed rail. Let's also add to the fact that even in this concept of a high-speed rail, they're dictating trains which actually don't really exist yet. In other words, no one's actually talked about, well, how are we building? Let's assume we lay the track. What are the trains going to look like? Well, they're going to be these great magnetic trains. They're not going to burn gasoline. They're probably going to be electric, but we're not exactly sure. But look, we have pretty renderings. Who drew the pictures? How much are they making for these pictures? John Phillips, of course it is full of corruption. If that isn't obvious to anybody who is half a brain, I really don't know what to say. I really believe the problem starts at the top. Not that I inherently believe Gavin Newsom is evil. I just believe he's elected him, so he's addicted to politicking. He's addicted to campaigning, and that's all he really knows how to do. He's not really running everything, and he picks people around him because they've helped him campaign in the past. They get him into office, and he's continuously campaigning, never governing. And that's the problem we have with a lot of politicians that we have in office today. They're on constant campaign mode, never in governing mode.
How much of a problem do you think it is for Gavin Newsom and the High-Speed Rail Authority that two of the smartest minds to ever come from the California legislature are now in the United States Congress, Kevin Kiley and Tom McClintock, who know the California budget backwards and forwards? They're familiar with this boondoggle. They're familiar with all of the problems associated with high-speed rail. Too bad Chuck DeVore isn't in the Congress, too. Then we'd have a hat trick. But how big of a problem is that for Gavin Newsom that he can't buffalo the feds because the feds have two minds that know the answers to all the questions?
I could add a bunch of other names to that one, like Bill Asali, but here you go. I think it's a huge problem for Gavin that I'm not sure Gavin himself is cognizant of him. I know a lot of people around Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom continually thinks everything is being okay because I've run for office 5 times and get elected. Gavin Newsom has never faced, because he's been within the California bubble, right? He was governor for a basically it was a couple years of Trump in office. Now he's facing a pretty hard pushback, looking in and pulling back the covers on all these things that you talk about continuously on his show. Gavin Newsom is going to get in more and more trouble. The challenge is going to be, in my not so humble opinion, is making the public aware in simple terms as to how much corruption and boondoggle, et cetera, that there is. You're right. Kevin Kiley and McClintock know the budget. I challenge the fact, and it's by Gavin's own admission, by the way. He's like, I'm really bad at math, I have trouble at Excel, and I have trouble reading. Well, that makes you really qualified to be governor since you're handling like about a $300 billion budget. And are you able to read the fine print, or somebody telling you things? And if you've noticed as time goes on, the people around Gavin Newsom who feed him the information start to peel off, right? Their staffers, their chiefs of staff, or whatever, and they start to peel off and go get safer jobs. Gavin Newsom, I think, is trying to attract us to the shiny object which he knows the best, which is campaigning. Okay, he's in constant campaign mode. I'm running down to the Carolinas. Well, I know it starts with a C, Gavin, but you know you're elected governor of California. Okay, I'm on podcasts. I'm on vodcasts. I want to be a radio host. You want attention for yourself because the only thing you know how to do is campaign. I would challenge anybody, and I think that's even on the Democrats that I know and the liberals. Gavin has not been exactly what you would call a stellar star of governing. And governing requires exactly what you said, where Kiley and McClintock are good at it, right? Getting down into the nitty-gritty details. That's the part of the job where you're not standing on stage and thousands of people are going, oh, you're so cool. And this is the part that Gavin Newsom, I think, really has trouble with. He just doesn't, on any given day, want to be in the office doing the job. And because he doesn't, if you think about it, he never really has great comebacks to line item level questions. He doesn't. He's kind of like, he just has rhetoric, and he says, well, these are the facts, whether you like it or not. And you're like, they're not the facts. But then, of course, he's already got the words out of his mouth. I think Gavin is getting in bigger and bigger trouble. The question becomes, how can we simplify this complicated morass? Again, when you talk about the money and the corruption on the high-speed rail, when you even talk about what's happening in education with our kids, when you talk about where did $24 billion go for the homeless, well, we're not exactly sure. That should be a headline every day until Gavin Newsom is out of office. How the heck do you lose that kind of money and the problem gets worse, or yay, it's slightly better, we've got a few thousand people less in L.A.? How does that happen? It's the same kind of problem you really have with a Barbara Lee and a Karen Bass. I'm going to go off cycle a little bit for a second here. They don't know how to govern. They were members of Congress, buried in Congress for a number of years. Look at Bass when she was like, I have to say something about the fires. What do you have to say? Well, nothing. You look at their records, and I looked it up before coming on here, and they actually only got passed 5 bills each. A couple of them were post offices in their 20-some-odd years in Congress. Now they've been put in charge of really big budgets. Well, in Oakland's case, it's a dwindling budget. In LA's case, it's a big budget. And they don't know what to do to govern. And all they do is pick cronies and people that have been with them before, and all they know how to do is campaign, get elected, and don't know how to govern. And the trouble is, and we shouldn't have to in California worry about how the mechanism of government works. That's not my job. I don't want to know where my water comes from. And any given day, I just want to turn on the tap and it comes in. Hope I don't have to pay too much. But I have to worry about it because Gavin Newsom is the poster child for knowing how to campaign, not knowing how to govern. McClintock and Kiley, to get back to your original question, know how to govern. They understand the nuances of how, as we like to say, the sausage is made. I'm not even sure Gavin, as governor of California, really does. And if you think about it, he was mayor of San Francisco for a term. Well, that worked out well for San Francisco. But he's never really worked in government. Do you know what I mean? In the legislature. He's actually known, even unlike Jerry Brown, as Kiley stated many a time, for not even wanting to come down to the legislature and talk to them and sit in and even see how things are really working. And I actually think that's a very big problem.
All right. Mike Netter, founding member of Recall Gavin Newsom 2020. You can get him online at rebuildcalifornia.com and follow him on X at Netter Mike. Mike Netter, thanks so much for stopping by.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could do a Google on the YouTube. You get one of our apps. Get the KABC app. Get the KSFO app. It's the easiest way to listen live to our radio stations and download all the podcasts. And hey, it might seem like there's a lot of podcasts out there, but there really aren't. It's either us or you got to listen to all of Gavin Newsom's podcast appearances.
Well, you know what? I started with nothing.
We have a strange story out of the Central Valley. Fresno Unified School District could pay former communications chief Nikki Henry, not Nikki Haley, different lady, $162,000 after it was revealed she created a dossier of fabricated attacks against the superintendent. The superintendent's name is Misty Herr, and this is turning into a big mess because you have someone who apparently made up a bunch of things and now is getting paid off to leave because I guess they want to give her a golden handshake before she rides off into the sunset. Joining us to talk about this is our colleague at our sister station, News Talk 580 and 105.9 KMJ in Fresno, afternoon drive host, who you can listen to between 2 and 6, Monday through Friday. You can also find him online at philipteresi.com. Philip Teresi, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Now, Philip, if you just have to make up a bunch of stuff about someone you work with and you get paid 6 figures to do it, I'll tell you, Randy kidnapped the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah, it's a really easy thing to say terrible things about people, especially with the internet as a resource, which is absolutely key to the story of Nikki Henry's dossier of 39 completely fabricated quotes.
Okay, so walk us through the story. Just exactly what happened here.
So the extremely nutshell version is in January of 24, the previous superintendent, Dr. Bob Nelson, announced his departure from Fresno Unified, giving the board 7 months to start the process of finding new superintendent. They bungled that process and tipped their hand that they planned to promote from within the now superintendent, Misty Herr. The Fresno Teachers Association, along with every other stakeholder inside the boundaries of Fresno Unified, objected, pushed back on this, and eventually compelled the board to conduct a nationwide search that still resulted in the hiring of Misty Herr. As soon as Misty was superintendent, she asked her communications director, Nikki Henry, to compile a list of mean things that the Teachers Association, the Fresno Teachers Association, had said about her online. Nikki Henry got caught using ChatGPT to generate 39 completely fabricated quotes. And when she was called out on this, Nikki Henry went on administrative leave and stopped returning messages. And Misty Herr responded by saying, well, they're all fake, but it got the gist of it.
Okay, that may be a new level of lazy, because one of the things it's not hard to find on planet Earth is people saying nasty things online. If you have to make that up, what's your problem?
Well, and the Fresno Teachers Association is not in the habit of saying nasty things about the superintendent of the district where their members serve. They raised real questions about the district spending $40,000 on one group of consultants that completely ignored feedback from the community requesting a nationwide outside search. They hired another consultancy to the tune of $120,000 to teach them how to do this job. Then they set up the superintendent search under the cone of silence of an NDA. And the Fresno Teachers Association reasonably and professionally questioned why a district where 9% of students as of their junior year are competent and proficient in math, where 13% of students as of their junior year are proficient in reading, writing, and English, would go to hire somebody who's been a part of a culture of failure for 36 years.
And for the taxpayers, if you're looking at your taxes, and all of us pay a fortune to live here in California, sometimes you have local bonds or state bonds that go to education. And I think the assumption is that most of that money actually goes to the classroom. And that's not even counting the California lottery. But then when you find out how much of the money gets gobbled up by those in between and never finds its way to the classroom, people lose their minds over this, because you look at the education scores, you look at the quality of education that exists in California, and we're paying for Cadillac service, but we're getting Kia results. And that just makes people's heads explode. But then you look at stories like this and you go, okay, we're wasting the money here, here, and here, and that money's not going to where it's supposed to go.
Oh, that's exactly right. This school district has a $2 billion, with a B, $2 billion budget. They've also got twice as many administrators as the next comparable school district, who they are paying all of at the same rate as that district. That district is Long Beach, where the cost of living is 38% higher on average than it is in Fresno.
Yeah, and the people who suffer ultimately are the students in California. And by the way, this is a crop that probably needs extra help, because they were the ones that were forced to sit at home during COVID, and they had to learn their instructions over the computer instead of being in the classroom. And we all know there are certain things you can't learn over the computer. How do you teach kindergartners over the computer? How do you teach special ed over the computer, PE over the computer? It's just something that's not possible. But that's what this group went through. And if there's any group you really need to focus and give extra attention to, it's probably this crop.
Well, you're exactly right. But Fresno Unified is not focused on student outcomes. Fresno Unified is not focused on student success. Fresno Unified is focused on the social justice agenda of the majority of the Board of Trustees and the self-interest of an overpacked, overpaid district office, of which Nikki Henry was a member of for about 6 years.
What's been the reaction in the community to this? Because I would imagine there would be a lot of outrage.
There's a tremendous amount of frustration and anger. The school board went ahead and voted to give Nikki this $162,000 golden handshake. This is despite the fact that Nikki got caught making up this list of lies that any other employee or student would have been shown the door for. This was after she resigned. She was an at-will employee who quit in shame after getting caught embarrassing her new superintendent. And there's no statutory requirement to pay her this money. So it's not just that she's getting something to which she was entitled by her contract. It's that the school district, without any rationalization in terms of statutory law, made a decision to give this person who quit an at-will job about 3 times the median income of the average household in Fresno. People are pissed.
And here's what happens. Because this is now part of the public record, when she goes to find another job at another school district, they're going to see that the Fresno school district paid her a ton of money to leave, and they're going to assume that the school district did something wrong and not her, and she's going to get another plum job somewhere else.
Well, that's in her 2-page long farewell to Fresno LinkedIn post. That's exactly what she hoped for. She's hoping that she'll land a CEO position somewhere next.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so
maybe Gavin will make her the Secretary of Education.
You know, that's the icing on the cake, John. I was doing just a little bit more reading about this question of did the school district misappropriate taxpayer funds by offering a non-statutorily allowed payout to a former at-will employee. And I found out that Nikki Henry's maiden name is Newsom. That's not a joke.
Well, if she's family, that would explain a lot.
I don't think there's a relation. Nikki's got an E at the end, but it was just this little moment of kismet for me that this person who has done so little and taken so much coincidentally has a very similar name to the most famous person in California for that behavior.
Well, if she doesn't find another job in education, maybe she'll be the sommelier over a Plumpjack. Philip Teresi, host at KMJ in Fresno, AM 580 and 105.9 FM. You can get him online at philipteresi.com, and you can listen to him whenever you're in the Fresno area. Philip, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, John.
And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And the first edition of the Blotter involves a driver who is so bad he could do mornings on the radio in L.A.
I had a feeling that was coming. I mean, that's the whole reason I downloaded this story. In Alameda, somebody was either drunk or high or on Ambien. Who knows? He slammed into 6 parked cars.
6, you say?
Yes. For more, here is KPIX.
All right, looking live along Lincoln Avenue in Alameda this morning. Part of that street littered with wreckage there. You can see on the ground, this is all the result of a reported driver smashing into a string of parked cars.
Yeah, we call that pinballing.
Okay, in the driver's defense, those parked cars came out of nowhere like bats out of hell.
This all unfolding just after midnight in Alameda when fire officials say a driver rammed into at least 6 cars. The scene stunned neighbors. Pretty loud at that. One witness says a Good Samaritan stopped the driver from leaving.
Now, we don't know what this guy was on, but if we just use the anecdotal evidence that we have on hand, when Wendy Carrillo got drunk and got behind the wheel, she slammed into 2 parked cars because she said she didn't eat at a cocktail party. So, Johnny, how loaded do you have to be to slam into 6?
You've got to be pretty loaded.
You know, I hid behind a tree because I thought he was going to come around and jump up on the sidewalk, and he ended up hitting this vehicle on the corner of Lincoln near Broadway right here. and he was stuck. And then another vehicle, like an older Toyota with a camper, pinned him in so he couldn't leave, just in case he was trying to get out and run. But
that's a dangerous move, especially in the East Bay. Trying to block someone in that's slamming into cars so they can't escape.
They call that an occupational hazard if you're on the clock.
This guy was must have been very heavily intoxicated. It was kind of a spooky situation, because you had to be careful, because this guy just hit about maybe anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8 cars, and it was pretty bad.
You think after the first time you went boom, you'd stop the car. Nah, you just keep going. Boom, 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 boom.
Well, let's say you're really into sleeping pills and you are literally asleep at the wheel. It doesn't matter what you run into, your foot's on the gas.
Well, then you'd hit more than 6. That would be 10, I believe.
That's what Mio there says, but it's important that we know as a news organization, police have not confirmed or commented on any claims of intoxication. We are still waiting to hear back. We did call. We're waiting to hear.
What, did he just forget his glasses? Some people we know.
Whether that's official. Fire officials say the driver, identified as the only person hurt, was taken to Highland Hospital by first responders. He will survive.
So that's what happened in the city of Alameda in Alameda County.
And it's about time for us to move on, because otherwise we're going to get a call from the union.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, the second edition is a story you referenced earlier.
In San Diego, forget everything you know about street takeovers. That's old. That's not cool anymore. Now there are beach takeovers, specifically people randomly organizing on Facebook something called Floatopia, where you bring your tubes out to the ocean because there's a loophole in the law. While you can't drink on the beach, there's nothing that says you can't drink on the ocean.
That's maritime law.
For more, here's ABC 10 in San Diego.
You can see here in the distance that this crowd at this Floatopia is nowhere.
That wasn't a bird.
It sounds like that crazy woman in Pasadena, the questions woman.
You can see here in the distance that this crowd at this Floatopia.
I'll be back! Get out!
You can see here in the distance that this crowd at this Floatopia is nowhere near the size of the last Floatopia. Still, lifeguards say this event is costing the city extra money.
While the party raged on in the water, police dealt with their fair share of problems at today's Floatopia. One person was detained for public intoxication, while 10...
Only one? That's not bad.
The rest floated away.
While 10 feet away, lifeguards treated this woman for hypothermia. From lifeguards, security...
Yeah, it's one thing to be tubing in a Texas river that's, almost bathwater in the summer. Then California oceans be cold even in July.
Well, you just have to change what you're drinking. Don't drink a cold beer. Drink a scotch. That'll warm you up.
From lifeguards, security, traffic control, and porta potties, it's clear Floatopia uses its fair share of city resources.
Floatopia!
So who pays?
Oh, boy.
Everyone you hear in this story is blowing a point, too, except for the reporter.
Floatopia!
So who pays for all?
Floatopia!
You'd think the organizer, naturally. But today, no one seemed to know who that was.
Okay, who organized?
People just saw a post on Facebook, hey, come drink in the ocean. And thousands came running.
Yeah, that's like the bat signal for alcoholics.
Okay, who organizes this event?
You know what? I don't know. That's a mystery to everyone.
Oh, no. No idea.
No idea.
No.
Now, I've been known to throw a tube in a pool and have a cocktail or two, and that's a good time, but isn't that a little tougher with the constant waves?
Now, I've got a theory as to who sponsored this.
Who's that?
Maybe it's Bud Light, and this is what they're doing to get beyond that Dylan Mulvaney controversy.
Who organizes this event?
Not sure.
Well, the challenge is there is no organizer.
The reason? The event is organized anonymously on Facebook.
As a result of that, as you know, you end up with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people showing up at an event. But when you go back to
5,000 tubes in one beach?
That's a lot of tubes.
So that's what's going on in San Diego. If you want to get your drink on in the ocean, apparently it's happening every weekend.